Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Where It's At. This is the show where I list off a handful of my favorite records from the prior month. That's right, these next 10 projects were my favorites to come out in February of 2021. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it, starting off with Ignorance, which is the latest release from The Weather Station. This folk art pop LP really captivated me. This is not the typical genre that really gets a lot of attention from me, but holy cow, I'm glad that I checked this out. The waiting instrumentals that flip between lo-fi electronic pop to straight up chamber folk, as well as Lindemann's vocals, create an introspective atmosphere. It's anxious and bittersweet while also being loving and warm. In certain ways, it reminds me of the album Kaput by Destroyer, but only if the vocals were more low-key and the song lengths were much shorter. All in all, I fell in love with Ignorance, and if you were going to listen to any of the albums that I suggest this month, I would highly recommend it being this one. Each track is outstanding in their own right, but the vibes on Parking Lot are off the charts. Back like they never left, Black Justice released their newest electro-industrial record, Forever in Your Heart. Holy shit, I can't even explain how hard this album rips. It goes all over the place with some of the meanest, gnarliest bass synths, and then adds some gorgeous sprinkling bells to counter the hate. More or less, Black Dresses are creating hyperpop scary punk cousin. The intensity never ends, even in the slower songs, because everything feels like it's brooding to a boiling point. On almost every track, things snap from normality to insanity on a dime. Even through the grime, distortion, and shrapnel, Black Dresses make tunes to groove to on Forever in Your Heart. It might not be for everyone, but I at least urge you to give it a shot. The songs that I'll be putting on repeat are Concrete Bubble, Bulldozer, Silver Bells, Understanding, and Can't Keep It Together. Another album that really stuck with me was the release from Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, Carnage. I'll be completely upfront before I get into this and say that I've never listened to a Nick Cave album before. I've heard so many good things, but I've never been compelled enough to dive in. So with this being my introduction into his music, and because this is the only one I've heard so far because I wrote this right before I shot the video, I must say, I love it. His lyrics and stories are utterly enthralling. His vocals are impeccable, almost like he's stage acting through each song. Not to mention, Warren Ellis' orchestration is the cream of the crop. I'm still trying to process everything from this album, but I do at least know that I like it a lot. My favorites off of this short track list are Carnage, White Elephant, Shattered Ground, and Balcony Man. Next up is the latest collaboration from your old Droog and the God Fahim, titled The YOD Fahim. Longtime friends and frequent collaborators, this is their second release of 2021. Their mix of abstract hip-hop and grounded production makes for a wonderful release. Their lyrics are conscious and undeniably smart, bobbing and weaving through the sample-heavy instrumental. It's consistent throughout and never really slows up. I wish there was a little bit more flash between these two, but hey, nothing in life is perfect. Also, the multitude of basketball references makes up for it, especially that line about being more miserable than a Knicks fan. That John is funny as hell. I really dug Mailman, Slam Dunk Contest featuring Pharaoh Monk, WNBA, The Dunking Dutchman, and Disney World. A record that I was kind of surprised that I enjoyed so much was Shiga, The Sunlight Mound by Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. I haven't really been into the psych genre for a while now, aside from maybe Wand, but damn, this record slaps. My usual distaste for psychedelic music comes from the fact that I'm just not really into the whimsical, swirling production styles, but on this record, Psychedelic Porn Crumpets mixed this thing to be heavy as hell. Each track has a weight to it while still using the typical frills that you'd find in the psych genre. It bends but doesn't break, and that's kind of the psych I'm here for. Really a solid album from beginning to end. This is definitely accessible for people who are into your everyday psych or neo-psych band. Some great cuts include Sawtooth Monkfish, Mr. Prism, Glitterbug, and Mango Terrarium. Next up is the highly anticipated debut from Black Country New Road, aptly titled For the First Time. After many delays and setbacks, this massive London-based group finally put out their first full length. And I'll be honest with you, I can't deny that I was kind of disappointed. Not due to the quality of music, because that was all well and good. Instead, I was most upset about the lack of songs on the album. Now, usually this is a stupid argument, but in this case, I think it's kind of fair. We were given 6 tracks on this album, but only 2 of them had never been heard before. And yes, these are some long, elaborate post-rock ballads, but still, it felt lacking. Basically, all that I'm asking for here is that we weren't given so many singles leading up to the release, because then at least I would have known 2/3 of the album going into it. For what it's worth, these songs are pretty great. I know most people compare them to Slint, and that is a fair comparison, but they definitely are their own band. The storytelling is second to none, and the song construction behind it is mind-boggling. If you like these super complicated, long-winded rock experiences, then you should definitely check out For the First Time. My favorites include Athens, France, Science Fair, Sunglasses, and Opus. Tyron by slowthai is up next. I've never really been a fan of grime, and I went into this album not looking for much. Instead, I came out on the other side pleasantly surprised by what slowthai was able to put out. The beats are sparse, some incorporating some elements of the blues and soul. I still didn't love the entire album, as some of it was was just way too grime for me, but when he did branch out, I thought it sounded great. Slowthai's lyrics are pretty damn good too, much more personal than his usual focus on politics, and he deviates his flow enough that nothing ever really feels stale. I did like Nothing Great About Britain when it came out, but I never really came back to it. Tyron, on the other hand, feels like an album that I could actually come back to without it really ever feeling forced. I know that I sound reluctant in saying all this, but I did find this record was one of my favorite releases of February. My favorite tracks end up being Mazza featuring A$AP Rocky, Play With Fire, I Tried, and Feel Away featuring James Blake and Mount Kimby. This is the first time I've done this on Where It's At, but we finally have an EP to be featured on the show. That's right, and the honors go to Void State for their EP, Distorted Reality. This project is dark and enthralling, building an entire eerie world around you within 18 minutes. The drum breaks are neck-shattering, yet there are so many atmospheric sections that leave you in a dream. Somehow, it toes between being an edge-of-your-seat kind of project to being an all-out rave within a few notes. Truly an interesting EP. Open Cage, Routine, Thin Air, and Closed Cage are my favorite cuts. Yet another EP, JPEG Mafia is back with his follow-up from last year's EP, this time being called EP2. As Peggy said, this is the only time he's going to make a project that sounds like this. In some ways, I'm disappointed to hear this because I do enjoy his SoundCloud pop auto-tune style that he's grinded out here. He's basically going for a better version of Drake, and in certain moments, he achieves that. The beats are lush, overflowing with oozing synths and stacked vocals. I did really like this project, although I did think that I was going to like it more after hearing the singles that had come out. Nonetheless, Last Dance, Fix Yourself, This One's For Us, and Panic Room were the tracks that I liked the most. Last but certainly not least, we have Mavi's latest EP, End of the Earth. With his signature brand of complex rhymes and abstract instrumentals, Mavi delivers once again on this project. The emotion in his vocals are strong and full of conviction while also accepting and embracing his feelings. For the most part on End of the Earth, the beats are mixed well below the vocals, making sure that each of his lyrics are heard loud and clear. I haven't listened to much Mavi outside of this EP, his 2019 LP Let the Sun Talk, and a handful of singles, so I'm definitely gonna have to try to dive deeper into his material. Oh, and the cover art for End of the Earth is already an early contender for my favorite album cover of the year. I love Time Travel, 1,000 Miles, and Town Crier, and that will wrap up this month's edition of Where It's At. Hopefully you got some good recommendations from this video, and if you did, feel free to leave a comment below with what you liked. Maybe I missed one of your favorite releases from this past month, and you can let me know down there as well. Links to all the projects that I've talked about are in the description box below, along with a playlist of all the songs that I talked about. Outside of that, be sure to subscribe for videos just like this every single month. That way, you can keep up with the new releases and know which albums are where it's at. Subscribing also keeps you up on all the other content that I release on this channel, so please be sure to do so. So be sure to not miss out on any of the other videos that I put out in the future. I guess all that's left to say is wear a mask when you go outside, check some of these projects out, and make sure to support your local record store and local artists. And until next month, happy listening.